Maura Murray is an American woman who disappeared on the evening of February 9th, 2004, after a car crash on Route 112 near Woodsville, New Hampshire, which is a village in the town of Haverhill. Her whereabouts remain unknown till this day. She was a 21-year-old nursing student completing her junior year at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, at the time of her disappearance. Maura Murray was born on May 4th in 1982 in Brockton, Massachusetts. She was the fourth child of her parents Fred and Lori Murray. She had an older brother named Fred, who was also named after his father, two older sisters, Kathleen and Julie, and a younger half-brother named Kurt. When Maura was 6, her parents had divorced, after which Maura lived primarily with her mother. In high school, Maura was a star athlete on the school's track team. After graduating high school, she was accepted in the prestigious United States Military Academy in West Point, New York, where she studied chemical engineering for 3 semesters. This academy is known to produce high-ranking members of the US military. However, after her freshman year, she transferred to the University of Massachusetts Amherst to study nursing because she believed that the military life was not for her. Prior to her disappearance, in November of 2003, this was 3 months before she had disappeared, Maura had actually admitted to using a stolen credit card to order food from several restaurants, including one in Hadley, Massachusetts, which was very close to her university in Amherst. The charge was to be dismissed after 3 months of good behavior. Let's jump to a closer date to her disappearance. 4 days before she disappeared, on the evening of February 5th, while she was on duty at her campus security job, Maura spoke on the phone with her older sister Kathleen at around 10:30 p.m. in the evening. Maura broke down in tears. She was reportedly completely zoned out and had no reaction at all, as well as being unresponsive. At around 1:20 a.m. during that same night, Maura's supervisor had asked her what was wrong. She only said 2 words, "my sister." Later, it was found out that Kathleen was a recovering alcoholic at that time and had been discharged from a rehabilitation clinic that evening. Her fiancé had taken her to a liquor store, which caused an emotional breakdown. 2 days before she disappeared, on Saturday, February 7th, Maura's father, Fred, had arrived in Amherst. Fred and Maura went car shopping that afternoon and later went to a dinner with one of Maura's friends. Maura dropped her father off at his motel room and had borrowed his Toyota Corolla. At 10:30 p.m. that evening, she returned to campus in the Toyota Corolla to attend a dorm party. Now, Maura had left the dorm party at around 2:30 a.m. that night, and an hour later, at 3:30 a.m., while she was driving back to her father's motel, she had struck a guardrail, causing nearly $10,000 worth of damage to her father's car. The responding police officer wrote an accident report, but there is no documentation of field sobriety tests being conducted. This means that we don't know whether Maura was driving under the influence that night. After the incident, Maura was driven back to her father's motel room and stayed in that room for the rest of the morning. Later on in that morning, at 4:49 a.m., there was a cell phone call placed to her boyfriend's Bill's phone number from her father's Fred's phone. Now, who exactly made this call and what was discussed during this call is unknown. Later on that Sunday morning, Fred learned that the damage to his car would be covered by his auto insurance. He then rented a car and dropped Maura off at her university and departed for Connecticut. At 11:30 p.m. that night, Fred called Maura to remind her to obtain accident forms from the Registry of Motor Vehicles. They also agreed to talk again Monday night to discuss the forms and fill out the insurance claim via phone. Now, on the day of her disappearance, which was Monday, February 9th, shortly after midnight, Maura used her personal computers to search MapQuest for directions to the Berkshires, which is a mountain range located in the western part of Massachusetts, as well as the city of Burlington, which is located up north in Vermont. It's worth mentioning that driving directions to Burlington were found in Maura's car later on. This indicates that she might have tried to get to Burlington later in the evening. Later on that same day, at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, Maura emailed her boyfriend the following words: "I love you more, stud. I got your messages, but honestly, I didn't feel like talking too much to anyone. I promised to call today though. Love you, Maura." She also made a phone call inquiring about renting a condominium at Bartlett, which is a town in New Hampshire. Maura had vacationed there in the past with her family. However, the owner did not rent the condominium to Maura on that day. Shortly after, at 1:13 p.m., Maura called a fellow nursing student for unknown reasons. Now, around 10 minutes later, at 1:24 p.m., Maura emailed a work supervisor that she would be out of town for a week due to a death in her family. According to Maura's family, she lied to her supervisor because the family did not experience a death at that time. At 2:05 p.m., Maura called a number which provided recorded information about booking hotels in Stowey, which is another town in Vermont. At 2:18 p.m., Maura called her boyfriend and left a voice message promising him they would talk later. Afterwards, Maura proceeded to pack clothing, toiletries, college textbooks, and birth control pills in her car. When her room was searched later, campus police discovered most of her belongings were packed in boxes and the art was removed from the walls. On top of the boxes, there was a printed email to Maura's boyfriend Bill indicating trouble in their relationship. Now, around an hour later, at around 3:30 p.m., Maura drove out of the campus in her black 1996 Saturn sedan. 10 minutes later, at 3:40 p.m., Maura withdrew $280 from an ATM. A security camera showed that she was alone at this time. Also, at a nearby liquor store, she had purchased about $40 worth of alcohol. Security footage again showed that she was alone at this time. At some point in the day, she also picked up the accident report forms from the Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles. Maura had left the town of Amherst, where her university was located, between 4 and 5 p.m., presumably via the Interstate 91 North. She checked her voicemail at 4:37 p.m. This was the last recorded use of her cell phone. Around 3 hours after Maura left Amherst, a Woodsville, New Hampshire resident named Faith Westman heard a loud noise outside of her home. This location is around 153 miles north from Amherst. Through her window, Faith saw a car up against a snowbank, and at 7:27 p.m. that evening, Faith called the Grafton County Sheriff's Department and reported the car accident. Faith later stated that she had seen a red light glowing from inside the car, potentially from a cell phone. A school bus driver named Butch Atwood, who lived nearby, also stopped at the scene. Butch saw the car that turned out to be Maura's Saturn sedan, as well as a young woman who most likely was Maura Murray, walking around the vehicle. He noticed that Maura was not bleeding or visibly injured, but she was cold and shivering, so he offered to call for help. However, Maura asked him not to call the police and assured him she had already called AAA. Butch knew there was no cellular reception in the area, and once back at his home, he called the police himself. His call was received by the sheriff's department at 7:43 p.m. that evening. Butch was unable to see Maura's car while he was on the phone, but he did notice several cars pass on the road before the police arrived. This detail is important because one of these passing cars may have had something to do with Maura's eventual disappearance. Another local resident driving home from work claims that she also passed by the accident scene around 7:37 p.m. and saw a police SUV parked face to face with Maura's car. She pulled over briefly and did not see anyone inside or outside of the cars and decided to continue home. This witness's statements contradicts the official police log, which actually has Haverhill police arriving 9 minutes later at 7:46 p.m. According to Haverhill police, when the responding officer arrived at the scene, Maura had already disappeared. No one was inside or around her car. Maura's car had hit a tree on the driver's side and was not drivable anymore. The car's windshield was cracked on the driver's side, and both airbags had deployed. The car was found locked. Inside and outside of Maura's car, police discovered red stains that looked to be red wine. Inside of the car, an empty beer bottle and a damaged box of Franzia wine was found on the rear seat. In addition, the following items were found as well: a AAA card issued to Maura, blank accident report forms, gloves, compact discs, makeup, diamond jewelry, driving directions to Burlington, Vermont, Maura's favorite stuffed animal, and a book called Not Without Peril. This book was about mountain climbing in the White Mountains. Missing from the car were Maura's debit card, credit card, and her cell phone. None of these items has been located or used since her disappearance. Police later reported that some of the bottles of purchased liquor were also missing. Police traced the vehicle to Maura and initially treated her as a missing person on the belief that she may have wanted to disappear voluntarily. This speculation was based on her travel preparations and no obvious evidence of foul play. Now, 5 years later, in 2009, Maura's case was given to the New Hampshire Cold Case Division, and authorities are handling it as a suspicious missing persons case. To listen to the full conversation about Maura Murray's case, please find our podcast YouTube channel called Wednesday Night Mysteries on YouTube, or listen to this podcast on one of your favorite podcast applications. Thank you very much for your time and for listening.